My name is Karen, and at 29 years old, I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I'd read about it, seen it in movies, heard stories from friends, but nothing prepared me for the night my fiance stood at our engagement party and announced he was in love with my sister. They'd been seeing each other for months, he said, and they were engaged. He expected me to crumble, to cry, to beg. What he didn't expect was who I walked in with that night, a man who made him realize he'd thrown away everything for absolutely nothing. Before I tell you how my engagement party turned into the sweetest revenge of my life, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe, because the look on his face when he saw who I arrived with was worth every single tear I'd cried in the weeks leading up to that moment. I'm a marketing director at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle, Washington. I worked my way up from an intern position right out of the University of Washington, climbing the ladder over 6 years through late nights, successful campaigns, and sheer determination. I lived in a modern apartment in Capitol Hill, paid off my student loans by the time I was 27, and had a savings account that made me feel secure and independent. I was proud of what I'd built. I'd always been the responsible one in my family, the achiever, the one who had her life together. 3 years ago, I met Derek Hamilton at a networking event. He was a sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, 32 years old, with a smile that could light up a room and charm that made everyone around him feel special. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when he talked to you. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had both career success and romantic happiness. It felt balanced. It felt right. Derek proposed 6 months before everything fell apart. We were at our favourite Italian restaurant, the one with the checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. He got down on one knee right there in the middle of dinner, and I said yes without hesitation. The ring was a princess-cut diamond, modest but beautiful, exactly what I would have chosen. We set the wedding date for June, 9 months away. This was September, so we had plenty of time to plan. Looking back now, I can see the red flags I ignored. Derek was always talking about moving up, making connections, networking with the right people. Sometimes it seemed like he was more interested in who people knew than who they actually were as human beings. But I told myself that was just ambition, just career drive. I told myself it was a good thing that he wanted to succeed. My sister Amber was 3 years younger than me, 26 years old, with long auburn hair, green eyes, and the kind of beauty that made people turn their heads on the street. She was 5 feet 9 inches tall and had worked as a model occasionally, though mostly she called herself an influencer. She had about 12,000 followers on Instagram, which wasn't huge but was enough for her to get some free products and the occasional paid post. She lived sporadically, working part-time jobs here and there, constantly asking our parents for money because she never seemed to have any savings. Growing up, the dynamic between us had always been clear. Amber was the pretty one. I was the smart one. Our parents loved us both, but there was a subtle favoritism toward Amber that I learned to accept. She could do no wrong in their eyes. When she struggled financially, they helped her. When she made poor decisions, they made excuses. I understood it, or at least I thought I did. She needed more support because she was less capable of supporting herself. But there was also jealousy. Every time I succeeded at something, every time I got a promotion or an award or any kind of recognition, Amber would get quiet and distant. Then she'd do something to get attention back on herself. The pattern had been there since we were kids, but it became more obvious as adults. There was an incident in college I should have paid more attention to. During my freshman year, I brought my first serious boyfriend home for Thanksgiving. His name was Todd, and I was crazy about him. Amber met him at the family dinner, and 2 weeks later, I found out they were dating. She cried and apologized, said it just happened, said she couldn't help her feelings. I forgave her because that's what you do with family. You forgive, you move on, you don't hold grudges. After that, Amber and I maintained a cordial relationship, but we weren't close. We saw each other mainly at family events. We texted occasionally. We were sisters by blood, but not by bond. When I got engaged to Derek, I introduced them at a family barbecue last summer. They shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and that was that. Or so I thought. When wedding planning started, I threw myself into it with the same energy I brought to my work projects. My parents insisted on hosting an engagement party in December, 3 months away. They booked an upscale hotel in downtown Seattle and started creating a guest list of 150 people, including family, friends, and colleagues. I was excited. Everything felt like it was falling into place. Around the same time, I got promoted to senior director at work. It came with a significant salary increase and more responsibility. Derek seemed excited about my success. He bragged to his friends about dating a senior director. He talked about our future, buying a house together, maybe starting a family in a few years. We discussed baby names, even though we weren't pregnant. We looked at neighborhoods even though we hadn't started house hunting seriously because of family pressure and to keep the peace. I asked Amber to be a bridesmaid. She seemed enthusiastic about it. She offered to help with planning, asked questions about the dress, the flowers, the venue. She texted me more frequently than she had in years. I thought maybe the wedding was bringing us closer together. I thought maybe we were finally building an adult sisterly relationship. I trusted Derek completely. The thought of him being unfaithful never crossed my mind. He was my fiance. We were building a life together. People don't do that if they're planning to betray you. Or at least, that's what I believed. It was late September, about 2.5 months before the engagement party, when I first noticed something was different. Small things. Tiny shifts in Derek's behaviour that I dismissed as stress or work pressure or wedding jitters. I told myself everyone gets nervous before a wedding. I told myself I was imagining problems that didn't exist, but deep down in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew something had changed. The changes in Derek started subtly in early October. He began working late more frequently, staying at the office until 8 or 9 at night, when he used to be home by 6. When I asked about it, he explained he had a big project at work, important clients he needed to impress, opportunities for career advancement that required extra effort. I was supportive. I understood ambition. I'd climbed my own corporate ladder through long hours and dedication. But it wasn't just the late nights. His relationship with his phone changed too. He started keeping it face down on tables, taking calls in the other room, angling the screen away from me when he texted. Before we'd shared everything openly. Now there was a privacy I hadn't noticed before. He started going to the gym more often, bought new cologne, paid more attention to his appearance. When I mentioned he looked good, he said he wanted to be in shape for the wedding photos. It seemed reasonable. Lots of people get in shape before their wedding. 3 Saturdays in a row, he cancelled our weekend plans. The first time he said he had to work. The second time he claimed his brother needed help moving furniture. The third time he said he wasn't feeling well and needed to rest. Each excuse made sense individually. Together, they formed a pattern I didn't want to see. When I asked casual questions about his day, about where he'd been or who he'd talked to, Derek became irritable. He accused me of being paranoid. He said I was too stressed about the wedding. He suggested I was becoming controlling and suspicious for no reason. The word he used was bridezilla, said with a joking tone that had an edge underneath. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe wedding planning was making me crazy. Maybe I was seeing problems that didn't exist because I was anxious about the commitment. My best friend Emma noticed something at a group dinner in mid-October. We were out with several friends, and afterward she pulled me aside. Derek seemed distant tonight, she said. He was on his phone the whole time. Is everything okay? I brushed it off, said he was stressed about work, but her observation stuck with me. Around the same time, Amber's communication with me increased dramatically. She started calling and texting almost daily, which was unusual for her. She'd always been sporadic with family contact, going weeks without reaching out. then suddenly appearing when she needed something. But now she was consistently present, always wanting to talk. The conversations always seemed to steer toward Derek and our relationship. She'd ask questions that felt intrusive. Does Derek ever feel trapped by the commitment? Does he ever talk about what he's giving up by getting married? Do you think he's ready for this? I told her. Derek was fine, we were fine. Everything was great. But the questions bothered me. Amber offered to help with wedding planning constantly. She wanted to go dress shopping venue, scouting cake tasting. She suddenly had unlimited free time for wedding activities, when normally she was always too busy with her influencer work or her various part-time jobs. She started showing up at my apartment unannounced, usually timing her visits for when Derek was supposed to be there. Her appearance started changing too. New wardrobe, hair styled differently, more makeup than usual. She posted more selfies on Instagram, seemed to be seeking attention and validation in ways that felt desperate. I noticed but didn't think much of it. Amber had always been concerned with her appearance. That was just who she was. One day she asked to borrow my car, claimed hers was in the shop. I said yes, because that's what sisters do. Later, I saw charges on my credit card from a hotel in Portland. She'd used my emergency credit card that was in the glove compartment. When I asked about it, she said she'd needed a place to stay overnight because the car repairs took longer than expected. The explanation seemed thin, but I let it go. There was a 3-day period in late October when Derek claimed he had a business trip to Portland for work. Important clients, potential contracts, career-making opportunities. He left on a Wednesday and came back Friday evening. That same 3 days, Amber was unreachable. She'd mentioned something about an influencer conference she was attending, but when I tried to call her, my calls went to voicemail. When they both returned Friday evening, they seemed different, energized, glowing. Derek came home in a great mood, brought me flowers, suggested we go out for dinner. Amber texted me that night saying the conference was amazing and she'd made so many good connections. I didn't connect their absences. Why would I? They were two separate people with two separate lives. But then there was the Italian restaurant incident. I suggested we go to our favourite place, the one where Derek had proposed. He refused strongly, almost violently. His face went pale and he said he was tired of Italian food, needed a break from it, couldn't stand the thought of eating there again. The intensity of his reaction seemed disproportionate to the suggestion, but he claimed he was just stressed and sick of the same routine. I found out later through social media stalking after everything fell apart that he'd taken Amber to that restaurant on multiple dates. He'd recreated our romantic spot with my sister. Every corner that held memories for me held newer, different memories for him. At family dinners, Derek and Amber started having inside jokes. Little references that excluded everyone else, shared looks across the table, laughter that seemed too intimate for people who'd only met a handful of times. My mother noticed. She made a comment about how nice it was that they got along so well. My father seemed oblivious, more focused on his food than the dynamics at the table. I found a receipt in Derek's car for expensive women's perfume, $300 for a bottle of designer fragrance. When I asked about it, he said he'd bought it for me as a surprise, wanted to hide it until closer to the wedding. I thanked him and forgot about it in the chaos of wedding planning and work stress. I never received that perfume. Months later, I saw Amber wearing it in an Instagram post, the bottle clearly visible on her bathroom counter. All these clues sat in front of me like pieces of a puzzle I refused to assemble. My brain knew something was wrong, but my heart didn't want to see it. I loved Derek. I was building a life with him. Acknowledging my suspicions meant acknowledging that everything might be a lie. One evening in mid-October, I came home early from work with a migraine. The fluorescent lights at the office had triggered a headache so severe I could barely see straight. I walked into our apartment and found Derek on the phone in the bedroom door, half closed, voice low and intimate. "I miss you too," he was saying. His tone was soft, affectionate, the way he used to talk to me. "I can't wait until we can stop hiding." He heard me and turned around, eyes wide with surprise, and something that looked like guilt. He hung up quickly and said it was his brother calling from Chicago. I pointed out that his brother would be at work at that time, that Chicago was 2 hours ahead. Derek said his brother had taken the afternoon off. The explanation came too quickly, too smoothly, like he'd prepared it in advance. I wanted to check the phone bill, but couldn't. Derek handled our shared phone plan, and I didn't have online access. I'd given him that responsibility because he was better with logistics and bills. Now I wondered what else he was handling that I couldn't see. My gut screamed that something was very wrong, but I had no concrete proof. Just a collection of small oddities that could all be explained individually. Taken together, they formed a picture I didn't want to look at. I tried to confront him gently. "Derek, is everything okay with us?" I asked one night over dinner. "Are you happy?" "Of course I'm happy," he said. "Why would you ask that?" He reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you. I can't wait to marry you. You're just stressed about the wedding. It's making you see problems that aren't there." For the next few days, he was extremely attentive. He brought flowers, planned a date night, talked about our future with enthusiasm. It felt like he was trying to convince me, or maybe trying to convince himself. I let myself be convinced because I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was too painful to consider. 3 weeks until Thanksgiving. My parents were hosting dinner at their house in Bellevue. Derek and Amber would both be there. I actually looked forward to it, thought maybe spending time together as a family would ease my anxieties. I thought seeing them in a normal family setting would prove my suspicions were groundless. I had no idea I was about to overhear the conversation that would shatter everything. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and grey, typical Seattle November weather. I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue with a pumpkin pie I'd made from scratch, sitting carefully in the passenger seat. It was my specialty, the one thing I always contributed to family dinners. My mother made the turkey and sides, my father handled the drinks, and I brought dessert. The house smelled amazing when I walked in. Roasting turkey, sage, stuffing cinnamon from whatever my mother was baking. My aunt and uncle were already there, sitting in the living room with drinks. My father was carving the turkey in the kitchen, while my mother fussed with serving dishes. Derek was late. He'd said he'd meet me there because he had some errands to run that morning. An hour out after the scheduled dinner time, he finally arrived, apologizing profusely. He blamed traffic, but the roads had been clear when I drove over. There was no traffic on Thanksgiving Day. Amber arrived shortly after Derek, wearing a dress that seemed completely inappropriate for a family dinner. It was short, tight, and revealing the kind of thing you'd wear to a club, not to Thanksgiving with your parents. She had full makeup on hair, styled in elaborate waves heels that made her tower even taller than usual. Everyone noticed, but nobody commented. Amber had always dressed for attention. During dinner, I sat between Derek and my father at the long dining room table. Amber was positioned directly across from us in Derek's eye line. I watched them throughout the meal and saw something that made my stomach turn. They kept making eye contact, not the casual glances people make during group conversations, but sustained looks that held meaning. Derek's eyes would drift to her, she'd meet his gaze, and they'd both smile, these small, secret smiles. The conversation flowed around me, but I barely participated. I was too busy watching them, too busy noticing the way Derek's attention kept pulling toward my sister. My aunt asked me about the wedding planning, and I gave generic answers. My uncle told a story about his latest fishing trip, and I laughed at the appropriate moments. But inside, I was cataloguing every glance, every smile, every moment of silent communication between my fiancé and my sister. After dinner, people scattered to different parts of the house. My father and uncle went to the living room to watch football. My aunt settled on the couch with my mother to look at old photo albums. I started clearing dishes from the table, carrying plates to the kitchen. I'd made 2 trips when I realized I needed to use the bathroom. I walked down the hallway, but as I approached the kitchen, I heard voices. Low, intimate, urgent. I stopped, pressed myself against the wall hidden by the corner. Amber's voice came first. We can't keep doing this, it's getting too hard. I miss you all the time, Derek responded, and hearing his voice use that tender tone with her felt like a knife in my chest. I know, baby, I know. Just a little longer, and we can stop hiding. Baby. He called her baby, the same endearment he used with me. When are you going to tell her? Amber asked. I can't stand watching you pretend with her. It makes me sick. After the holidays, I promise. I can't ruin her Christmas. You know how she is about Christmas. We'll tell her in January, right after New Year's. Then we can finally be together publicly. I'm tired of hiding, Amber said, and her voice had a whining quality I recognized from childhood. I want to post about us. I want to show everyone I won, that for once I have something better than perfect Karen. Soon, Derek said. We just need to be patient a little longer. Everything's planned. The engagement party is perfect timing. What do you mean I'll announce it there, in front of everyone? That we're together, that I'm choosing you. She'll be humiliated and everyone will see that you're the better choice. Amber laughed, delighted. That's perfect. That's so perfect. There was a sound of kissing, soft murmurs. Derek's voice saying, You're so beautiful, so much more exciting than... He stopped himself, but the implication was clear. More exciting than me, more beautiful than me, better than me. I stood in that hallway, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribcage. Every instinct screamed at me to run into that kitchen and confront them, to scream and cry and demand explanations. But something stopped me, some instinct for self-preservation, some strategic part of my brain that kicked in despite the emotional devastation. If I confronted them now, I'd be the one who looked crazy. I'd be the jealous fiancé making accusations at Thanksgiving dinner. They'd deny everything, make excuses, gaslight me into thinking I'd misunderstood. I forced myself to breathe normally. I made noise, called out loudly, Anyone want coffee? I walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Derek and Amber were standing by the sink, supposedly washing dishes together, but they'd clearly been closer moments before. They jumped apart when I entered. Guilt was written all over both their faces, but I pretended not to notice. I started the coffee maker with hands that shook so badly I almost dropped the pot. I asked about dessert, discussed Christmas plans, smiled until my face felt like it might crack. Every second was agony, but I maintained the performance. Derek kept looking at me nervously, trying to gauge whether I'd heard anything. Amber seemed almost excited, like she wanted me to know, like she was hoping I'd found out so the secret could finally explode. We made it through coffee and pie. People praised my pumpkin pie, and I thanked them automatically. My mother asked if I wanted to take home leftovers, and I said yes. Normal conversation, normal actions, while inside I was screaming. I claimed a headache and said I needed to leave early. It wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding, though, from emotional trauma rather than physical pain. Derek offered to take me home, but I refused. Stay, I said, forcing brightness into my voice. Enjoy your time with family. The word family dripped with irony he didn't catch. He kissed my cheek, and I managed not to flinch. Amber hugged me goodbye, and I felt her satisfaction in the embrace. She thought she'd won. She thought she had something I didn't know about. I made it to my car before the tears started. I drove 3 blocks, pulled over in a grocery store parking lot, and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Huge, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. I cried for 20 minutes, then forced myself to calm down enough to drive home. In my apartment, I sat on the couch staring at nothing, processing, trying to understand how this had happened. My fiancé and my sister, for months, planning to humiliate me publicly at my own engagement party. It was so cruel, so calculated, so much worse than simple cheating. Then something clicked in my brain. That strategic part that had stopped me from confronting them in the kitchen activated again. If they wanted to humiliate me publicly, I needed to be prepared. I needed evidence. I needed proof. And I needed a plan. I went to Derek's laptop. The password was my birthday. He'd never changed it, never thought he needed to hide anything from me. I logged in and started searching. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The laptop sat open on my desk screen, glowing in the darkness of my apartment. It was 3 a.m. I'd been reading for hours, clicking through files and folders, uncovering evidence of a betrayal so methodical it took my breath away. Derek had synced his phone to the laptop, which meant all his text messages were backed up automatically. I opened the Messages app and found a thread with Amber that went back months. July. 4 months of messages, 4 months of lies. The early texts were flirtatious. Amber complimenting Derek after a family barbecue, saying he was too good for me, that I didn't appreciate him. Derek responding with appreciation, saying it was nice to be seen. The conversation escalating quickly from friendly to intimate. Within 2 weeks, they were meeting for coffee, then lunch, then dinner at restaurants across the city, places Derek claimed he'd never been when I suggested them. The texts became sexual. Explicit discussions of what they wanted to do to each other, what they had done together, how exciting it was to sneak around. Amber wrote about how much better she was than me. Derek agreed. They traded complaints about my perceived flaws. I worked too much. I was boring. I didn't know how to have fun. I cared more about my career than my relationship. There were texts about me specifically, about how I'd react when they told me, whether I'd cry or scream or beg. They found it amusing, planning my humiliation like it was a game. I found the deleted emails next. Derek had removed them from his inbox, but they were still in the trash folder, recoverable with a few clicks. Hotel reservations for Portland, 2 adults. King bed. The dates matched Derek's supposed business trip. Restaurant receipts forwarded to his email. Places I'd suggested going to, places he'd refused to visit with me because he'd already been there with her. Wine bars, steak houses, the waterfront cafe I'd wanted to try for months. Credit card statements revealed a financial secret I hadn't known existed. Derek had a credit card I'd never seen separate from our shared accounts. The statement showed $17,000 in debt. Hotels, jewelry purchases, expensive dinners, gifts. He'd been financing his affair on credit, running up massive debt to impress my sister. One jewelry purchase stood out. $5,000 at a high-end jeweler downtown. The date was 3 weeks ago. I clicked through Derek's photo folders until I found what I was looking for. A picture of an engagement ring. Not my ring, a different one. Bigger diamond, fancier setting, exactly the kind of flashy jewelry Amber would want. Derek had proposed to her. While engaged to me, he'd proposed to my sister. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I found a hidden folder labelled Work Documents. Inside were photos. Derek and Amber together at the beach. Derek and Amber kissing in front of a sunset. Derek and Amber in bed together, intimate photos I forced myself to look at because I needed to see everything, needed to know the full scope of the betrayal. The dates on the photos went back to July. The same month I got promoted to senior director. The same month I'd been so proud, so happy about my success. While I'd been celebrating my career advancement, my fiance had started sleeping with my sister. There was a pattern in Amber's texts, constant comparisons to me, constant need to prove she was better. She sent him screenshots of my Instagram posts and made fun of them. She sent screenshots of my Facebook updates about work achievements and called me an attention seeker. The irony was staggering. Derek fed into it. He validated her jealousy, agreed with her criticisms, positioned himself as the prize she'd won by stealing from me. The texts revealed a man I didn't recognize. Someone cruel and calculating, someone who enjoyed the drama and the deception. I found text exchanges about the engagement party specifically. They'd planned this for weeks. Derek would give a speech, announce he couldn't marry me, reveal his relationship with Amber, propose to her publicly. They'd discussed her outfit, her entrance, the exact words he'd use. They'd choreographed my humiliation like a performance. Amber's texts were gleeful. She couldn't wait to see my face. Couldn't wait for everyone to see her win for once. Couldn't wait to be the center of attention at an event that was supposed to be mine. This wasn't about love. This was about competition, about finally having something I didn't have. By 3 in the morning, I'd printed out the most damaging texts and emails. I'd saved copies of photos to a USB drive. I'd documented everything systematically, methodically, like I was preparing a work presentation, instead of gathering evidence of my own destruction. I should have been crying, should have been breaking down. Instead, I felt cold, calculated, determined. They wanted to humiliate me publicly. They'd made a strategic error. They'd given me time to prepare. I called in sick to work Friday morning, told my boss I had food poisoning from Thanksgiving dinner. Then I called Emma. She answered groggily. It's 6 in the morning. This better be good. Derek's cheating on me with Amber. They're planning to announce it at the engagement party. Silence. Then Emma's voice came back sharp and awake. I'm coming over right now. Don't do anything until I get there. She arrived 30 minutes later with coffee and bagels I couldn't eat. I showed her everything, the texts, the emails, the photos. She read it all. Her expression growing angrier with each page. This is evil, she said finally. This isn't just cheating. This is psychological warfare, I know. You're going to confront them, right? Call off the engagement, cancel the party. I thought about it. The obvious response would be to confront Derek, immediately break up with him, uninvite everyone to the party, hide in my apartment, and lick my wounds. That's what they expected. That's what would let them off easy. No, I said slowly. I'm going to let them think their plan is working. I'm going to let them believe I have no idea, and then I'm going to destroy them at that party. Emma's eyes widened. What do you mean I don't know yet? But I have 3 weeks to figure it out. 3 weeks to plan my own response. They want a public spectacle, I'll give them one. Just not the one they're expecting. Emma grinned. Okay, I'm in. What do we do first? I thought about it. We need proof that will hold up beyond my word against theirs. We need professional documentation. I'm hiring a private investigator. I spent Friday researching private investigators in Seattle, found one named Sharon Lambert, who specialized in infidelity cases and had excellent reviews. Her rates were high, but I had savings. I called her office and made an appointment for Monday morning. The weekend was torture. Derek came over Saturday night, all smiles and affection. He'd brought takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. He kissed me and told me he loved me, and I kissed him back and said it too. The words tasted like poison in my mouth. We watched a movie on the couch, his arm around me, and I felt nothing. No love, no attraction, no connection. Just cold determination and careful planning. I was playing a role now, pretending to be the trusting fiancé while gathering weapons for the battle ahead. Sunday, Derek wanted to go look at houses in neighbourhoods we'd discussed. I went along, toured open houses, discussed floor plans and school districts. I smiled at real estate agents and asked questions about property taxes. Inside, I was counting down the days until I could stop pretending. Monday morning, I met Sharon Lambert at her office. She was in her 50s, professional and no nonsense, with grey hair pulled back in a bun and sharp eyes that had probably seen every kind of human betrayal. I told her everything, showed her the evidence I'd gathered, explained about the engagement party and their planned announcement, asked what she could do. I can follow them, she said. Document their meetings, photograph them together, get evidence that will be indisputable. It'll cost $3,000 for 2 weeks of surveillance. I didn't hesitate. Do it. She assigned herself to the case personally, said she specialized in cases where the cheating party was particularly cruel or calculating. She found those cases personally satisfying to work. For the next 2 weeks, Sharon followed Derek and Amber. She documented them meeting at hotels downtown. She photographed them having dinner at romantic restaurants. She captured them kissing in public, holding hands, acting like a couple. She gathered so much evidence that by the end of 2 weeks, I had a folder 3 inches thick. During those 2 weeks, I lived a double life. To Derek, I was the excited bride-to-be. I discussed centerpieces and seating charts. I confirmed the catering menu. I finalized the guest list. I played my role perfectly, and Derek never suspected a thing. To Amber, I was the supportive sister. I responded to her texts with enthusiasm. I asked her opinion on wedding details. I shared my supposed happiness. She ate it up, thrilled that I was so clueless, so blind to what was happening right under my nose. But in private with Emma and Sharon, I was someone else entirely. I was strategic, calculating, planning every detail of my counterattack with the precision I usually reserved for marketing campaigns. The evidence Sharon gathered was comprehensive. Photos time-stamped and GPS tagged, video footage of them entering hotels together, audio recordings from restaurant conversations where they discussed their relationship openly, financial records showing Derek's secret credit card and the debt he'd accumulated. One piece of evidence was particularly interesting. Sharon had followed Derek to a lunch meeting at an upscale seafood restaurant downtown. He was meeting with a man in an expensive suit. Sharon photographed them, ran facial recognition, and identified the man as Gregory Hart, CEO of Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals. I recognized the name immediately. Gregory Hart was a legend in Seattle's pharmaceutical industry. His company was prestigious, successful, exactly the kind of place Derek had always dreamed of working. Sharon dug deeper and found that Derek had applied for a position at Pinnacle 3 months ago. He'd interviewed but hadn't gotten the job. The lunch was Derek's attempt to network his way back into consideration, trying to impress Gregory Hart with his connections and credentials. Here's the interesting thing, Sharon said. Gregory Hart is a member at your gym. I've seen him in the background of your gym check-in photos on Instagram. I thought about it. Gregory and I had chatted casually a few times, brief conversations by the treadmills, nothing substantial. He seemed nice, intelligent, successful. I'd noticed he was attractive, but he'd never mentioned being interested, and I'd been engaged, so I'd never thought about it further. But now an idea was forming. A plan that would humiliate Derek in ways he couldn't anticipate. A plan that would make Amber realize she hadn't won anything worth having. December 10th arrived, 10 days until the engagement party. I had all the evidence I needed. I had documented proof of every lie, every betrayal, every cruel moment. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed something more, something that would make my victory complete. I needed an audience, and I needed to show Derek exactly what he was losing. I went to the gym at the time I knew Gregory would be there. The gym was busy on that Tuesday evening, full of people trying to work off holiday weight before the holidays even arrived. I positioned myself on the treadmill next to the one Gregory Hart usually used. It felt calculating, which it was. Everything I did now was calculated. Spontaneity was a luxury I couldn't afford. Gregory arrived 20 minutes into my run. He nodded at me in recognition, set up on the treadmill beside mine, and started his workout. We ran in companionable silence for a few minutes before he spoke. "How's the wedding planning going?" he asked, making casual conversation like we'd had dozens of times before. "It's going," I said, and something in my tone made him look over at me more carefully. "That doesn't sound enthusiastic." I took a breath, made a decision. Actually, there might not be a wedding. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." He paused. His treadmill turned to face me directly. "Are you okay?" I paused mine too. The gym sounds faded into background noise as I looked at this man I barely knew, this successful, attractive stranger who represented an opportunity I couldn't have imagined 2 weeks ago. "I will be," I said, eventually. We ended our workouts and he suggested coffee. There was a cafe next door, quiet and warm. We sat at a corner table and I told him everything. Not because I wanted sympathy, but because I needed an ally, someone who could see Derek for what he really was. I showed him some of the evidence on my phone, the text messages, the photos, the financial records. His expression grew darker with each image. This is cruel, he said finally, methodically cruel. This isn't just about cheating. This is about power and humiliation, I know, and they're planning to make the announcement at my engagement party in 10 days, in front of 150 people. They want to destroy me publicly. What are you going to do? I looked at him directly. I want to show them they didn't break me, that I'm not the victim they think I am, that I've moved on to something better. The implication hung in the air between us. Gregory sat back, processing what I was suggesting. You want me to be your date to the engagement party? I know it's a lot to ask. We barely know each other. But you're successful. You're the CEO of a company Derek desperately wants to work for, and you're someone he tried to impress. If I show up with you, it changes the entire narrative, from heartbroken victim to woman who upgraded, he said thoughtfully. Exactly. He was quiet for a long moment, studying me. Then he said something I didn't expect. I've noticed you for months. At the gym, you're always focused, determined, pushing yourself. I found it attractive, but you wore an engagement ring, so I kept my distance. I respected that boundary. I didn't know what to say. The idea that someone had been interested in me while I'd been obliviously engaged to a man who was cheating on me seemed both ironic and heartbreaking. I'm not asking you to date me for real, I clarified. Just to come to this party, to help me show them I'm not destroyed. Gregory smiled. What if I want to date you for real? My heart did something complicated. After everything with Derek, the thought of trusting someone new seemed impossible, but there was something genuine in Gregory's expression, something honest. Let's get through the party first, I said. Then we can talk about what's real and what's strategic. Deal. He extended his hand and we shook on it. Now tell me exactly what you need me to do. We spent the next hour planning. Gregory would pick me up at my apartment. We'd arrive at the party together in a chauffeur-driven Mercedes that his company kept for executive transportation. I'd wear red, Derek's least favorite color, a dress that would make me look powerful and confident. Gregory would play the role of the successful, attentive date who made Derek realize exactly what he'd thrown away. The next day, I went shopping, found a red dress that fit perfectly elegant but striking, bought new shoes, new jewelry, got my hair cut and styled. I was preparing for battle, and my appearance was my armor. December 17th arrived, 3 days until the party. Derek was increasingly nervous. He kept asking questions about party details, about who was sitting where, about the timeline for speeches. He was trying to plan his big announcement, trying to make sure everything was perfectly timed for maximum impact. I answered all his questions sweetly, gave him every detail he asked for. Meanwhile, I finalized my own plans with military precision. The videographer I'd hired supposedly to capture memories of the engagement party had special instructions: multiple camera angles, focus on the stage during speeches, capture reactions from the audience. I wanted everything documented. Amber's texts reached a fever pitch. She asked what I was wearing, what time the party started, whether Derek would give a speech. Each question felt like she was savoring the anticipation of my humiliation. I answered everything, played the clueless sister perfectly. I confirmed details with the venue coordinator, made sure the microphone system was working perfectly, arranged for a projector and screen telling the coordinator I wanted to show a slideshow of photos from Derek's and my relationship. The coordinator thought it was sweet. She had no idea what I actually planned to show. December 18th arrived. 2 days before the party, I stayed at Emma's apartment, claimed I wanted a bachelorette sleepover before the big event. Derek didn't question it. He probably thought I was being sentimental and romantic. Emma and I painted our nails, watched movies, and went over the plan one more time. I felt terrified and exhilarated, sick with nerves and energized with purpose. In 48 hours, everything would change. What if this goes wrong? I asked Emma late that night. What if I'm making a huge mistake? The only mistake would be letting them humiliate you without fighting back. Emma's voice was fierce. They planned this, Karen. For months, they discussed exactly how to hurt you in the worst possible way. You're just defending yourself. I know, But still nothing. You're strong, you're smart, and you're about to show everyone who the real winners and losers are in this situation. Gregory called around midnight. Are you sure about tomorrow? Last chance to back out. I'm sure. More sure than I've been about anything. Good, because I meant what I said at the coffee shop. After this is over, I want to take you on a real date. Not strategic, just us. Something warm spread through my chest. Okay, after this is over, December 19th, the day before, I woke up calm, resolved. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing for this moment. Everything was ready. All the pieces were in place. I got my hair and makeup done professionally at Emma's apartment. The stylist created an elegant updo makeup that was dramatic but tasteful. When I put on the red dress, Emma actually gasped. "You look powerful," she said, like someone who's about to burn everything down and rise from the ashes. That's exactly what I am. Gregory's text came at 6 p.m. I'm downstairs whenever you're ready. I took one last look in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. Strong, determined, ready for war. The Mercedes was waiting at the curb, black and gleaming. Gregory stood beside it in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When he saw me, his expression shifted into something appreciative and protective simultaneously. "You're breathtaking," he said simply. "Thank you. You look pretty incredible yourself." The chauffeur held the door open and we slid into the back seat. The leather was soft, the interior pristine. Gregory took my hand as we pulled away from the curb. "How are you feeling?" he asked, like I'm about to walk into battle. "Good, because you are, but you're not walking in alone." The drive to the hotel took 20 minutes through downtown Seattle traffic. My heart pounded harder with each block. By the time we pulled up to the hotel entrance, I felt like I might be sick, but I took a deep breath, squeezed Gregory's hand, and stepped out of the car into the December evening. The ballroom doors were ahead. Inside, 150 people waited, including the fiancé and sister who'd planned my destruction. Time to show them exactly who they'd underestimated. The hotel ballroom was decorated exactly as I'd planned it. White roses covered every surface, their scent mixing with vanilla from the candles scattered throughout the room. String lights created a warm glow that reflected off the champagne glasses guests held. Everything was elegant, romantic, perfect for an engagement party. It was 6:55. We were fashionably late, which was intentional. I wanted most guests already there, drinks in hand, conversations flowing. I wanted an audience fully assembled for what was about to happen. Gregory and I stood outside the ballroom doors. Through the glass panels, I could see people mingling. I spotted my parents near the entrance greeting arriving guests. My father wore his good suit, the one he'd bought for my college graduation. My mother had on a blue dress and pearls. And there was Derek, standing beside my parents, playing the role of the perfect son-in-law-to-be. He wore a navy suit and looked nervous, checking his watch repeatedly. He was waiting for me, probably wondering where I was, whether his timeline for the big announcement would stay on track. Across the room, I spotted Amber. She stood near the bar wearing a tight black dress that left little to the imagination. Her hair was styled in waves makeup dramatic. She kept glancing at Derek, then at the door, anticipation clear on her face. "Ready?" Gregory asked quietly. "Ready?" The doors opened. We walked in together, Gregory's hand warm and steady on my lower back. The gesture was protective and possessive in equal measure. Heads turned as we entered. Conversations paused. The room's attention shifted toward us like a wave. I heard the gasps, saw the eyes widen, felt the shift in energy as 150 people registered not just my arrival, but who I'd arrived with. Derek's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, recognition as he realized who Gregory was, then something that looked like panic mixed with fury. My mother's expression was pure confusion. My father looked between Gregory and Derek, trying to understand what was happening. And Amber. her face twisted into something ugly. Rage and jealousy and disbelief all at once. I walked directly toward my parents and Derek Gregory, beside me, my head held high. The red dress swished around my legs with each step. My heels clicked confidently on the hardwood floor. I felt powerful, untouchable. "Hello, Derek," I said when we reached them. My voice was calm, pleasant, like I was greeting an old friend. "This is Gregory Hart. Gregory, my fiancé, Derek Hamilton." The word fiancé dripped with irony only Gregory and I understood. Derek's hand shook slightly as he extended it for a handshake. Gregory's grip was firm, confident, the grip of a man who held all the cards. "Mr. Hart." Derek stammered. "I didn't know you knew Karen." "We're quite close, actually," Gregory said smoothly. His hand returned to my waist, the gesture unmistakable in its implication. My father stepped forward. "Gregory Hart, the pharmaceutical CEO." The same Gregory confirmed, shaking my father's hand. "What an honor," my father said, clearly impressed. "Karen didn't mention she knew you." "We've been getting to know each other recently," I said, smiling at Gregory. "He's been wonderful." Derek's face had gone pale. His eyes darted between Gregory and me, trying to understand, trying to figure out if I knew about him and Amber, trying to determine if this was coincidence or calculated revenge. People approached to congratulate us to meet Gregory, to exclaim over how wonderful it was that I had such successful people in my life. Each introduction felt like a small victory. Each moment of Derek's discomfort fed something cold and satisfied in my chest. Dinner was served at 7:30. The seating chart placed me at the head table with Gregory on one side and my father on the other. Derek sat 3 seats down, separated from me by family members. Amber was at a different table entirely across the room, seething visibly. I ate calmly, made conversation with guests at nearby tables, laughed at Gregory's jokes, played the role of the gracious hostess while inside I counted down the minutes until the speeches would begin. Derek drank heavily. I watched him drain 3 glasses of champagne before the salad course finished. His hands shook slightly as he cut his steak. He kept looking at me, then at Gregory, then at Amber. The panic in his eyes grew with each passing moment. At 8:30, my father stood and clinked his glass. The room quieted. He gave a traditional speech about how proud he was, how happy he was to see his daughter so settled, how wonderful it was to welcome Derek into the family. The irony of his words was almost painful. Then it was Derek's turn. He stood on unsteady legs, swaying slightly from alcohol and nerves. He walked to the microphone that had been set up on the small stage at the front of the room. His steps were careful, measured like he was trying not to stumble. The room fell silent. Everyone watched. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, the groom's speech traditionally heartfelt and romantic. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Derek began. His voice cracked slightly. "There's something I need to say." I saw Amber sit up straighter at her table. Saw her fix her hair, prepare herself for her moment in the spotlight. "I can't marry Karen," Derek announced. The room erupted, gasps, shocked exclamations, people turning to their neighbours in disbelief. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stood up, face red with anger. Derek continued the words tumbling out now. "Because I'm in love with someone else. Someone who makes me feel alive in ways I never felt with Karen." Amber stood from her table, started walking toward the stage. She was smiling triumphant, ready for her grand entrance as the other woman, the victor in this twisted competition. Derek put his arm around her as she reached him. "I'm engaged to Amber," he said. "We've been seeing each other for months. We're in love. We're going to be together." Amber held up her left hand, showing off the ring I'd seen in the photos. A diamond that sparkled under the lights bigger and flashier than mine had ever been. The room descended into chaos. My mother screamed, actually screamed a sound of pure anguish. My father started toward the stage, shouting. Guests were talking over each other, shock and scandal spreading through the crowd like wildfire. This was their moment, their planned humiliation, the spectacle they'd choreographed for maximum impact. They expected me to cry, to beg, to fall apart publicly while they stood victorious. Instead, I stood calmly, slowly. Every eye in the room turned toward me. The noise died down as people waited to see how the jilted bride would react. I walked toward the stage with measured steps. Gregory stood as well, positioning himself protectively behind me, but letting me take the lead. This was my moment now. Derek tried to hand me the microphone, some vestige of politeness, even in his betrayal. I took it firmly, my fingers steady. "Thank you, Derek," I said clearly, my voice amplified through the speakers. "You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." Confusion rippled through the room. This wasn't the reaction anyone expected. "I've known about your affair for 3 weeks," I continued, watched Derek's face drain of colour. "I hired a private investigator. I have photos, text messages, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing the $17,000 in secret debt you accumulated while pretending to plan our future." The room went dead silent. People leaned forward, riveted. I pulled out my phone and nodded to the venue coordinator. The projector I'd arranged flickered to life. The screen behind me filled with images. Derek and Amber kissing outside a hotel. Text messages displayed in enlarged font. His message calling me boring. Her message about finally winning against me. Their discussion of how they'd planned this exact moment to humiliate me publicly. "Oh my God," someone in the audience breathed.